Hey guys, welcome to this first episode of the Awaken Out of Context podcast. I'm Jason Berry and my guest today is Dr. Joey Webber. Joey is a lecturer in health and social care at Bolton University in England. He spent his life immersed in meditation practices, including growing up in a Tibetan monastic community. Dr. Webber recently completed his PhD on the role of equanimity in mindfulness and its link to cultivating compassion. He is also the developer of the Equanimity Barrier Scale, also known as EBS. It's one of the world's first psychometric scales focused solely on the construct of equanimity. His latest book, Why Mindfulness is Not Enough, Unlocking Compassion with Equanimity, provides an overview of his research and includes case studies and guided meditations to bring equanimity down from the mystical and into the everyday. Dr. Webber's Equanimity method, which includes self-assessment and guided meditations, has helped individuals and groups unpack why we discriminate and how to find compassion. If you want to check out Joey's stuff, head to Equanimity, that's EQUANAMEE.com, or just follow the links in the show notes. I hope you enjoy this very wide-ranging conversation with Dr. Joey Webber. That's a nice piece of artwork behind you.
Yeah, this is my daddy's. Well, my daddy paints stuff. My dad paints stuff like this. He's a Tibetan artist. He's quite famous, actually. Well, in the Tibetan art scene, which I guess is not that major. But if you're in it, you could tend to know.
It's cool. It reminds me of, is it those like things they do with sand? It's kind of like, what's the name of it?
Sand mandala. Yeah.
A sand mandala. Is that
Yeah.
That's obviously not sand, is it?
Imagine if it was sand and it all just crumbled.
Yeah, I didn't know if it had been like covered in acrylic or something crazy.
No, it's a mandala, but it's not sand. It's on canvas and it's painted.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's what he does. That's part of the reason I'm so into I've had so much education in Buddhism and my upbringing was kind of saturated with it. So when I came to do like the PhD, it was noticing how the West had conceptualized mindfulness and where it was going with it, and then thinking it could go a bit deeper. Actually, it could be a bit more profound. So it was going back into the Buddhist teachings to see what was there that could supplement where the Western knowledge was at. And so for me, that was equanimity quite clearly, and that's what I've set out to do, which is, I assume you've got an insight into. Have you?
Yes, I've read some of the book. I was trying to read it all this week, and then life happened.
You needed a poo.
Yeah, well, do you know? See, I'm dyslexic, right? So audiobooks have been a complete game changer for me. So I've actually got your book on paperback. I've got it on Kindle, and I've got it on Audible. But obviously, I wanted to make it as easy as possible for myself, so I decided not to Audible it and try and impress myself and read it properly. But I ended up making it more difficult for myself when I probably should have just listened to your dulcet tones in the car or something.
Would have sent you to sleep, mate.
I wanted to feel like a proper podcaster, like glasses on and highlighting notes and stuff like that.
I was hoping you'd have such in-depth knowledge that you'd know it more than me, because I can't remember it now.
Well, do you know, it's a funny one, because I was sort of doing a bit of research and stuff and thinking, well, is it good to know all the book, or is it actually good to not know some stuff? Because obviously, if someone else is listening to this that hasn't read the book, you don't want to just crack on and just assume people know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I feel like the optimum length of book reading was achieved, which is like 30%.
So you read like what?
The forward.
Not 100 pages, really. So you did 30 pages. It's not bad. But some of them would have been pictures, title pages. So
Yeah, my speed, the speed of my reading is about 30%. So I've basically read a full book.
yeah, you've read a full book, but like very slowly. So
Yeah.
it's the 30% speed is probably in theory taking you about 9 years to read 30 pages.
Well, do you know, have you ever seen those? There's, I think, one called Speechify, but basically, if you've got an article or a Google Doc or anything like that, and it's like a plugin, and it'll read it for you. And the idea is you can sort of hack, so you could speed it up and then read it as you're thinking it. So it's like a whole productivity hack. And I was doing it, and I couldn't keep up with the normal reading speed. So I had to slow it down, and it had this thing at the side saying like how much productivity you're saving. And then I went into minus. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
well, that makes me feel a bit shit. But
oh,
yeah.
hey, it's not a deficit. It's a good thing. To be honest, I hate reading. I can't believe that I've done a book because I don't enjoy reading at all, and I don't like writing.
Well,
So
that's
that,
fascinating.
yeah,
But I think,
I've had,
with things like podcasting and audiobooks, it's just honestly, I just love it so much because it's just opened up knowledge to people. One, in a sort of physical space, so you don't have access to it, and then two, in terms of like an intellectual, if you struggle actually reading,
mm,
it's cool.
mm.
So equanimity, when did you first come across the concept?
What do you think? What do you think it is?
What do I think it is?
Yeah.
It is being able to keep a cool head and a soft heart, or an open heart. Is that right?
Well,
It's like the balance.
go on.
The balance. See, I've wondered if it's similar to. I was wondering about Zen, how it differs from Zen, and the middle way, as the Buddha would call it. Is it somewhere around that? I know it's quite hard to.
Well, I've got two definitions, you see, so I'm interested in people's idea.
Mhm.
Because I do, because there's so many. Like the first thing you said sounds like, I don't know, you read it in like a greetings card shop or something. I don't know. If you Google like equanimity or whatever, then I'll expect some kind of like mountains and weather. No matter what, you stay the same. The mountain stays the same, or some kind of
Oh,
stream.
like the like a stoic kind of mountain that stays steady while the storms are going on around it.
Exactly, yeah. That or some kind of like stream and you know, I don't know, pebbles. But it's always quite like abstract and out there, isn't it? And it doesn't make sense to us in a practical way. Like we're human beings and we don't speak in mountains and rivers. We're speaking like when we say heart, it's like what really does that mean?
Mm.
What do we mean, the organ, the biology of the heart? Like what aspect of it is it you're talking about? So like really these kind of questions and growing up in the environment I did, the people I did, uh, and professionally in life, one of the biggest things I found, and you can ask if this is true or not, was that I felt incredibly judged all the time by people.
Okay.
What do you think to that? Is that true for you?
I don't know. I think yes, I've felt like I'm judged, but actually, I think a lot of people don't really give a shit what you're doing. And one of the things I've learned in the last few years is it comes back to that kind of basic concept of kind of caring less about what people think about you. And I've had to do quite a lot of work on myself in that regard. But I've sort of got to the point where I think I don't know if they are judging that much anymore because they've got their own
Stuff. So
shit going on.
you're saying that you judged yourself more than you perceived others judged you.
Mm.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yes.
By the way, there's no right or wrong. I'm asking you because I'm genuinely interested, because people have different experiences, but in essence, there's this feeling of quite extreme polarity towards extremes. It's either yes or a no, or a like or a dislike, quite passionately involved, or like they hate and reject it. So it's like accept or reject. All these kind of concepts are how people behave in relation to others. And so friendships, relationships, everything's built around how a person judges
Sure.
a person. And of course, like you just said there, we also do a whole host of judging on ourselves. And really, equanimity is the construct that enables you to become aware of how and why you judge
Got
the
you.
way you do. So I'm tried to really make it this very, very particular and scientific, meaning that you can test and measure it. Because if you can test and measure it, it becomes part of a program, and then that can be tested on people, and then we can see any effects of equanimity training, for example, on people's brains, to see if it is something, you know.
Have you
So
done any studies in that regard?
no, I've created a tool that measures equanimity, but all the studies are really early. It's a really early place in the world for science on equanimity. That's why I have become one of the people to talk about it, because there was no one else talking about it. It's kind of implied, but what it is there's two parts to it. The first part is you're in equanimity, and so if I was to try and create my own equanimity now in relation to something, I'd become aware of how my mind categorizes. So I call it discrimination faculties, but basically we like something, or we dislike it, or we find it neutral in any experience. So we'll be doing it now. We're either like this or neutral, and the people at home, if there is anyone's going to listen, it's going to be like
Randy and Phil.
Andy Phil. Oh, I like this, I dislike that. Every single experience we ever have is a category that we've created. It falls into a. Would you say that's true?
Yes, it's almost like an engineer's way of looking at it, taking a zoom out, a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
And do you know what it makes me think about is something I wanted to ask you about, which was psychedelics. Psychedelics and that sort of sphere. And we may be sort of going slightly off in a tangent, but it reminds me of when I have partook on in the psychedelic realm, shall we say.
Yeah.
I remember once being I woke up the next morning and I was I couldn't put it into words, but it was like everything, I could see all the categories. I could see all the columns that everything fit into. And it kind of, so what you were saying there about judgment and categories, I felt it sort of reminded me of that, in that everything is a construct, isn't it? And I mean, yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. So basically then, so in equanimity is your awareness of these categories, so awareness of one's own discrimination faculties, but you're not reactive to them, because you're going to respond with compassion for self and others. So you part of that journey. But see, equanimity is definitely like a warmth. It's like an insight. It's like a development on from just being still in presence, but it's how you conduct yourself in the world. And it's to do with an action. It's an action element. So you're doing something, you're being deliberately, consciously non-reactive, but so you can react compassionately. And so by doing that, there would be the sense of inner equanimity going on for you.
Right.
Because you're aware that your constructs have created you to think and act in a certain way.
Like certain biases.
Yeah, all implicit bias, all these biases that we've learned from mummy, daddy, parent, siblings, early childhood, early authority figures, school, media, politics. You can't really go anywhere without having bombardment of advertisement upon us. So somewhere along the line, we're reacting in relation to that, not necessarily a true form of who we are, or what we class self as, but we're just regurgitating these social constructs, but being so definitive about them because these categories are giving us such a seductive kind of way of being. Because if we like it, we want it. Gives us pleasure, and it's like, oh, man, I want more of it. That stops, or the more and the more is actually turns the pleasurable thing into not a pleasurable thing.
Yeah,
because grasping hamster wheel type existence. So even pleasure itself is like so fleeting and temporary because of the lack of equanimity we have to it. It's it can become quite a difficult thing, and I think that's like the roots of addiction and stuff like that emerge.
sure.
So then when you go like dislike, avoid that, and you kind of repress or suppress all the stuff you're not interested in because you're so concentrating on what you like. And all the neutral parts of life and experience, you're just not asked about them. So they probably get put on the dislike pile, actually, which makes you more polar, more extreme. Because most of life is actually kind of neutral, really. But there's this sense of always living in a waiting room, waiting for the next thing to give us pleasure. And it's somehow that during this process, because of the lack of equanimity and the lack of awareness towards our own categories, that we somehow don't experience life to its fullest.
That constant chasing.
Yeah. So inner equanimity is that. Does that make sense? Categorization and then compassion. And then outer equanimity. This is the cool bit where you connect with others, because you're like, bloody hell, I've got all this conditioning going on and I've got all these heavy constructs, but really they're in many ways made up. I mean, some of them I might really truly feel, but a lot of them are just kind of fabrication. So if I'm going to try equanimity to you now, like I'm trying to be equanimous to Jason, I'm going to recognize that you've got this whole host of discrimination going on towards me. So it's like, oh, you might not like my bloody t-shirt or something, or the way I did my hair, or the fact I didn't say something, and it's your podcast, so you're trying to get it a certain way, and so that might create a dislike, and that might affect you. But rather than me then slamming you for it and us having conflict, because I'm practicing equanimity to you, I'm going to give you absolute patience because you've got your discrimination. So I'm aware, I'm non-reactive because I know what's going on. And ultimately, I'm trying to be a person. So I'm like, you know what, Jason, don't worry. I can still like you, and we can still get on. So even if you have a conflict, it's like you can have a conflict at the behavior, but not ultimately the deep down the person. So you can get over things more. And I think it's mental resilience, emotional regulation, all that type of stuff.
Do you think, I'm trying to work out the difference between sort of basic self-awareness. I'll give you an example, and I'm slightly embarrassed about admitting this, but I like to go to the sauna quite a lot. I have a gym at home, but I go to sauna elsewhere. Anyways, and I noticed it last night, actually. And I'll walk past someone, and it's usually a bloke that looks in really good shape. I'm not going down that route. Looks really good shape. And part of me hates him. And it's just like, not bad. In my head. And then I catch myself and I go, why is that? Well, it's actually because it's usually someone who's probably similar height to me, similar sort of weight class, shall we say.
Yeah.
And it's probably, I'm just jealous because I would like to look like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
So I'm aware of it. And of course I don't hate him.
Yeah.
Because I've caught myself in that moment.
Yeah, totally.
I hope no one from Nuffield is listening to this.
I'm going to send it to the bloody HR after this.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't want people to think, all the people, I don't want Phil and Andy to think that we're not talking about psychedelics, because I do want to come back to it. I was getting there. But anyway, you've talked about this.
How are you for time, by the way? Because I know you.
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It was, what was he say? You're going to give me £100 an hour?
Yes.
Not joking.
The second hour must be on credit though. So
No, I'm only joking, Jason.
bloody daft, isn't he?
So yeah, I would say this is where mindfulness has done incredible things. My book, on my works, clearly it's not enough. Some people go, even because of the lack of equanimity to that, go, oh, you didn't like mindfulness. He's trying to make it somewhere else, because I've used the word not or something. And it's a lack of equanimity towards fucking language. So people that pick it up because they're like, ooh, it's not it's not, so.
But you've got to have a good title, otherwise no one's going to pick it up.
Yeah,
it's got to be,
I wanted 6 people to read it at least, so I had to be. So I would say yes. This is where mindfulness comes in. You've become self-aware. I mean, you're self-aware even when you're not practicing mindfulness, but the ability to monitor what's going on in the moment is self-awareness. You're aware that this thought has come up about this guy because it's had symbolic meaning, and if you were complete arsehole, you'd then, I guess, be an obed to him, reality.
You wouldn't catch yourself in that moment, and you would just be a dickhead.
Yeah, exactly. But you monitored it. You thought that's not necessarily true, and you let it go. So in that instance, yeah, there's tiny little flash pans of equanimity happening. So what I'm saying is that's good, but why don't we practice to cultivate that at all times, not just random times? And that's a small incident, if you basically think about how emotional life is or how emotional people can get, the quicker people are to be so involved in their emotions, the less equanimity they have.
Sure.
So it's a kind of observe how absolute blown away you are by your own emotions. It's like your mind's a bomb, a ticking time bomb. You've got ready laid kindling of likes and dislikes already laid there from your whole conditioning. And any single moment, someone's going to light a bloody fire inside you, and you're going to react. It's just, you just can't not react with your emotions, because there's nothing but emotion. You feel you are the emotion in the moment. So
you are not your thoughts.
Yeah. So working with equanimity would be like working with all of that catastrophe, and just recognizing that you can slow that process down, and over time you become less reactive.
I'm not sure if you're aware of my own meditation journey, but I've been doing it for 6 years. I got into it through the Headspace app.
Yeah.
And I sort of see some of the issues with where some people might criticize it, because it's quite a linear sort of process in terms of just being mindful, paying attention to the breath and stuff. But I do think, having practiced it over time, you can't explain it, can you? But you start to see things differently. It's probably the same reason that you became more aware of equanimity. Does that make sense? I suppose you say in the book, it's a really good starting place. It's a really good base.
Yeah.
I
think totally. Yeah, you're right. These apps, all the saturation of the mindfulness world and the meditation world, it's opened it up so people are meditating who wouldn't necessarily meditate, and they're trying it and giving it at least. And now there's a healthy enough science body out there for people to be like, yeah, all right, I'll give it a go. And then that's having some genuinely profound effects for people, and it's helping people deal with the dis-ease and the disease of life, which is mental neuroses, and it's stressful. It's definitely helping. I guess this is some of the criticisms I have of the whole industry, is that it's not getting to any kind of root problems. It's kind of, rather than looking at society and the way it's structured and the inequalities that it's creating, it's just kind of telling people to get on with it, but a bit better. deal with all the shit, but more mindfully. It's not actually changing anything. So that's where I came in and thought, well, it fits very nicely with the kind of model of just you go off and do it yourself. It's nothing to do with 90 hours a week we're giving you. It's all about how lacking in mindfulness you are. So, sort yourself out and come back to work type thing.
Yeah.
Depends how people are using it. Some organizations do it tokenistically, some embed it. Individuals the same time. Normally individuals just have an app and they do it dip in, dip out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of like one that's kind of promote preventative. By doing consistently over time, like that will protect yourself a lot more. Whereas what tends to happen is they're like, oh, I don't fucking meditate and I'll drink, smoke, and do what I want for like years, and then suddenly I'll have this mental health crisis. I'm like, what do I do? 99% of the time, you just go and get pills, and then it'll kind of hide the issue. It puts it under the carpet, and then that's when they'll try meditation. Go, oh, I'm going to try meditating, and they'll sit down for 10 minutes and go, can't do this. It's crap. It doesn't work or whatever, and it becomes this insanely trivial little gesture against a backdrop of all kinds of stuff that's like really messed up. So I don't like it used in some kind of the modern context, but at the same time, if it works, it works, and it's each to their own. People have different hurdles to go through. So
everyone's sort of coming at it from where they are.
Yeah, you've got to know where you're at, obviously. It's the only starting point.
Do you know, I'm going to come back to the sauna again. You're talking about, some people who might sit down and they go, I can't sit still or whatever. And that's another thing I notice when I'm in the sauna or the steam room and I would watch people, or I'll just observe what's going on. And so many people just can't sit still.
I know. Yeah, it's a really big problem, I think. And I think this is in part to a lack of equanimity, a lack of contentment with the neutrality of experience. We're desperately trying to seek some form of pleasure. And smartphones have given us that shit. Like you give little dopamine hits every time you kind of swiping, right? So we're now programmed to constantly seek stimulating experience. And so it's the constant seeking that becomes a bit of a trap. And then over time, not that much time actually, your whole neural pathways will just reflect that. So you are just going to be like this living.
Talking about digital dementia.
Oh, right.
That's a term that's been thrown about at the moment.
Right. Okay. And I guess that's just what a lack of.
Yeah, it's that TikTok. That everything's super fast.
Yeah.
There's even films now. There's films that are coming out that are, let's say their target audience is below the age of 20. And the way that they switch between camera angles is like this.
Wow.
It's the same cadence of how people are used to scrolling. That's how quickly.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, that's definitely symptomatic of a culture and a society that doesn't value presence.
It's terrifying.
Doesn't value the serenity of the moment. And deep down, it's because people don't feel comfortable with themselves.
Sure.
They don't know who they are. They don't know why they are the way they are. And instead of figuring that shit out, we're just trying to mask it by playing games. And so what I see is a lot of dysfunctional people with social masks on. And so equanimity is like just exploding the mask. It's like, take it off. And like, who are you? And how can you deal with reality in the good, the bad, and the ugly? The neutral, the positive, the negative. It's very vital for people, and it's a really useful skill and tool. But even now, it's like it's not communicated that well, and it's full of misperceptions about it being something to do with mountains and that and weather. It's got to make it practical. You've got to be what do you mean in your conscious experience subjectively? How can that translate into equanimity? That's why it's like the 7-step method in the book, and there's also a meditation practice specifically for it. The meditation practice for equanimity isn't just like following the breath and looking at your body scan, although those might implicitly create a tiny bit over time, because you're kind of dealing with sensations, pleasant and unpleasant. Like when you do the body scan, like naturally that might evoke some form of equanimity towards stimuli. But at the same time, there's other meditations that will directly focus on an equalizing concept in your mind in relation to different people. So I do like a meditation that invites you to visualize like someone you like, and you say the kind of similar things to them or imagine them, and then someone that you don't like, and then someone that you're neutral to, but the consistency's there. But you're not used to that. So it's like reframing your experience. So you got to have the meditation part to it and the self-analysis, and the kind of the wisdom insight element of like learning about it. And too often, because we're in this society that you say we can't sit still, and we're flitting relentlessly from one thing to the other, but it's all head stuff. It's all intellectual crap, like applying any of it. And so knowledge about equanimity is pretty useless to you unless you're also trying to apply it. It's the experiential aspect of it that then gives you that deeper sense of knowledge and power, and you can use that in your life. Otherwise it just becomes a thing. We could be talking about potpourri now. Instead of the word equanimity, I could talk about potpourri.
How it's such a 90s thing to say, by the
way. On my eye there. That just made me want to smell it. But yeah.
Nice.
So it's like, do you know what I mean though? It's like even language is a construct. And so, we've got a new word now, and it's like, oh, what does that mean? You can only get so far with knowledge. You also need to experience and apply it.
So that's the other downside of all this. I was talking before about how, the books have been opened up by lots of audiobooks and podcasts, but then on the flip side of that, there's knowledge, and then there's actually, you can go too far. And then you've got so many books and so many different things and so many morning routines that
scary.
And it's like
acts as a barrier, doesn't it? It's like
have you come across that guy? What's he called? Naval Rackinick or something? You just type him in Google. Say Naval. He was like a Silicon Valley type of guy, but he's really interesting, anyways. And he basically.
Yeah.
He's like an investor and all this, but he sort of he does a lot of meditation and stuff like that. He's a really cool guy. You should look him up. Anyways, and he talks about I think it's 10 books. So rather than reading like 100 books or 200 books or whatever, he's like, it'd be better to read, 1 or 10 really, really well and apply things in it, rather than flitting from the next thing. So trying to gain all this knowledge, where actually, take, your book.
Yeah.
Great example, obviously.
Finally, I thought you were just here to plug Naval.
Yeah.
I was like, finally, he's going to sell me a book. Phil Allen's already bought it, so we're going to have to think of someone else.
Link in the bio, link in the description. And take that one book, and then just
my
really
book.
Take Joey's book.
Take my book
and read it 10 times.
Yeah. Or buy 10 copies, reach each copy once.
Yeah, every little helps. That's an interesting one. Tesco coming in there.
Oh, is it not Asda?
Every little helps.
I thought every little helps. Is it?
No, that's Asda price and some birds smacking her ass.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I must have really loved that image. I know I love that image. Every little helps.
Do you remember the Bay? The Bay Radio.
I feel like an idiot, Jason. You're totally right. It's Tesco.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Yeah. Do you remember the Bay Radio?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They had a jingle that they had in the 90s. It comes into my head every few days. Just in the morning might come on. And I think it used to be always on in the morning before I went to school. And sometimes it'll just be there. And like that place, it got bought out by Heart like years ago. Like it's not running anymore. And that jingle, it used to say favorites on the 16s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So that it stopped in the year 2000 and it's still running around in my head.
Well, there you go. That is the power of conditioning, social conditioning
And that's
upon.
why I was talking about it, by the way. I wasn't just talking about.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that, because yeah, what you basically just showed us, you've demonstrated to the world there, is that human beings are very vulnerable.
It's
And
that
so
malleability, the brain, the plasticity, right?
yeah, we're soaking up everything, and basically, I mean, I looked at an article last week and it said we get advertised upon about between 3 and 10,000 times a day.
Really?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, yeah, I've started to try and like notice now, but
Well, I know
it's,
they talk about, Facebook ads and Instagram ads and all that, and
yeah,
how we're now being, they say, literally manipulated into a certain way, but it's actually nothing new
yeah, exactly. It's not.
because we've always had TV and
We have, yeah, but I guess we used to turn TV on at a certain time and then be
yeah,
now we've got our little
it's
mini TVs in our little pockets all the time. And
yeah.
I don't mean literally mini TVs.
Yeah.
But I mean like phones acting as TVs. And even
Sure.
so we're seeking out. This is the difference. I guess before it's like, oh, there was set times in which we were potentially going to be infiltrated by ads, but now it's like, because our brains or our minds are so kind of vulnerable and we're not used to dealing with ourselves, we're actually seeking out. We actually get stimulated from adverts.
Mm.
Said stimulated from adverts. So we're actually receiving reward. Our mind thinks it's reward based upon junk. So we're now going to focus on junk to get reward. Do you get me? So we're training ourselves to
Yes.
be like kind of really warped creatures that are kind of getting rewarded on such a mass level, but the reward's almost pitiful. We don't even notice it. But it's keeping us in that kind of cycle. That's heartbreaking for me, who's a father and who's interested in people, because it's like, Jesus Christ, we have enough crap to deal with let alone trying to now, just be in the moment and be with people. It's like our brains have been hardwired in a way that's detrimental to our mental health. So anxiety, depression, and all that kind of jazz is shooting through the roof, and there's no wonder. Yeah. So it's
I really feel for the next generation.
there's
And
also something in that, like every single person in every generation has said, I feel for the next generation. I feel for the next, because humanity is just pretty messed up, really. In and has been in ancient times. When the Greeks, I always think about, the Greeks had it right, but they were full of like raping in each other and
of
shagging each
course, yeah.
other. All
Let's
right,
pause
really.
this and
Yeah.
go get some LSD and come back in 3 hours and we'll talk psychedelics. Make sure that mandala's brought down.
I'm just going to come back in as AI, or am I now? And that's the real Joe is watching me, trolling me.
No, don't. You'll give me a migraine because once I start overthinking these little pixels.
Let's see. 1 second. I'm going to see like this normal red rose.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for the reality check. We're at my mum's. I think it was the Jubilee or something, and she had, in the end of this gazebo, she had it was like a reel, a plug with a reel on it, and it was like hung up over in the corner, and then it had a plastic bag around it, but the plastic bag it was a waterproof power socket, basically. Just wait. And I kept on saying, because the bag was just floating around, and I was like, pleased about that bag being up there. I don't know, and then it became a bit of a thing where I was saying, like in the Matrix when there's like a black cat walks past and it's like, just keeping you in check. I'm like, don't worry, the bag's there. We're not, it's not a simulation. So now the plastic bag and the gazebo has become slightly legendary.
Wow, so it's got a label of being.
And that's without psychedelics.
That's
For
some
them
kind
lot,
of
anyways.
mystical thing. I want to see it now.
Yeah, it's probably gone in the bin, but the memory of the bag remains, and it lives on through our shared stories about the bag.
So any listeners, all the thousands of listeners, are now going to have this image now, and that's going to repeat down there.
Just pop down a Happy Shopper and ask for a 20p bag, and you'll see what I'm on about.
There's a lot of supermarket references in this.
I know.
Are you just a product?
My first sponsor is Happy Shopper. You what?
Are you just a consumer?
Just a consumer. Yeah. You don't want to see what I'm surrounded by. Stuff.
Topic, picnic. I'm just thinking retro cool chocolate bars.
I'm pretty good at the not having the old chocolate. Yeah, it's the cocaine that gets me.
Just the psychedelics, just the mushrooms and the fucking acid. Yeah. Just to finish that story, I would be all for that. I think they're making waves in terms of therapy and healing. And I think access provides insight and wisdom, and wisdom combined with the right use and motivation can create healing. And that can, be very helpful. So I'm definitely not against it.
I think it's intention. And obviously, just for the record, it is illegal where we are in the UK and probably most places. But yeah, I think it's an interesting development, and they're doing loads of studies and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, the mysterious they scientists,
bloody white suits.
I used to think
white coats, white suits.
The white coats are doing it on the white suits.
Yeah,
using multicolored roses.
So let's talk more practical tools and less of the abstract, shall we? So if someone's listening to this now, and that's all very well and good, but I've got my kids and stuff, and I'm just doing my 9 to 5, and I'm just trying to get through life.
Yeah.
Why do I need equanimity? I've got my Headspace app. I do my 2 minutes a day or whatever, and that's all I want to do. Yeah. And I just want to get through the day. Because with us living in a capitalist culture, mainly.
So political animal.
Well, everything is optimized towards that, isn't it? It's optimized towards being more productive.
Yeah.
And this and that. So there's always, it's very difficult, and often ends up being sort of a middle class luxury to look at one's own flaws and be more equanimous. So how would you frame it for the ordinary man or woman on the street?
Riffraff, the general riffraff.
Yeah. How would equanimity help them?
So I mean that's a trend, the most people that are interested in mindfulness and that are middle class white women, and that all the yoga types and that they're all white women,
and us too,
and two really handsome young men,
young,
all relative age. If you look at age like equanimously, it's all just a label, isn't it? Really. I mean,
it's my birthday next week.
Oh, there you go.
I wasn't like seeking anything, but I probably was a bit. But it's literally the first time I'm approaching it, and I'm looking forward to it. Not like I'm looking forward to presents and stuff, whatever. But I'm all parties. I'm actually looking like I now love getting older and getting wiser, even if it's only a tiny bit. Whereas I used to be a bit like, once you hit like 25, you start to go off. I'll be 34 next week. And it's like, actually, once you reframe it and go, well, now imagine in a year's time, how much more knowledge I'll have, how much more insight.
It reminds me of this book. If you 1% happier, you can get 1% happier every year. Something like that. I can't remember it, but anyway,
ends
up at being 27%. I've never been able to work it out, but I think
it's compounds, Joey. That's why. So it's compound interest. So That's the idea, isn't it? So you improve by 1% every year. I don't know the maths, but in 10 years, that would be more like 250% or something.
Right. Okay. Bloody hell,
But
it's maths.
then it's the other way around, because I mean, this is like James Clear, Atomic Habits. He's all
Yeah,
about
that,
like
that
these little
yeah,
incremental changes and stuff.
yeah,
And then the opposite is true. So if you decide to drink a beer every night for a year,
yeah,
over time,
yeah,
it's going to really do something. You know,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
not going to die, but it's not great.
yeah,
Whereas if you took that £3 for a beer and you put it into a savings thing,
you'd have $600 million.
yeah. Anyways, probably a bad analogy, but
No, yeah, no, I'm with you. So yeah, so the trend is that there's mainly middle class white women benefit from, and us too, the benefit from
and we got the pick of the crops. Sorry, you're married, aren't you?
I'm not married, I've got a girlfriend, but yeah,
Well,
she's close enough in it.
of course it is.
Yeah, unless someone really hot's listening and they can. No, I'm joking.
Would they like a free meditation?
So a free signed copy of my book.
Yeah.
You'll have to edit this out.
Yeah. What was that? What was that guru? Who was the one that introduced the Beatles? What was he called? Do you remember?
No, but did he just use it for sex, basically?
Well, have you ever heard the Beatles song "Sexy Sadie"?
Yeah.
Sexy Sadie. Yeah, you broke the rules. And anyways, that song's about him. So it's when
Oh,
John Lennon found out that he was flirting with the women and that and whatnot, and obviously using his power
yeah.
to,
What's whatnot? I'm interested.
well, I don't know what whatnot was, but I think he was copping off with all the
What
women.
might it? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What was well, let's be like really professional. Let's look this up.
Shall I
Guru
answer the question before? What you look at? No, no, no. And then I'll answer the question about why should people listen.
Maharishi Mahesh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories about guru figures, taking advantage because all this type of self-development stuff, like, there's no assumption that they've made it or like, they are mindful now or they are equanimous now in my case, because like these are kind of lofty virtues that I would say are lifetime goals. They're not something you can kind of quickly obtain and then somehow live everything every other moment like that. Like we're ultimately still human, and an unenlightened mind like is going to have a big ego, and that ego is going to relate to things wrongly a lot of the times. So there's never this kind of, that's what I think sometimes puts people off this self-help stuff, is that this idea that you've got to become something, or like this linear path to better, but you're fine as you are. And just slow increments, 1%, where is going to make a big difference. And so that's what I say when you asked me before about how's people going to benefit from, with our kids and stress and that. And it's like, reminds me of the South Park clip. Have you seen the South Park clip that goes, it's advertising a Buddha box, and basically it's just a box that you put on your head, and it has your smartphone in there, and you can just watch all the time, and it tells itself at being like, you too can be like the Buddha, shut off from the world around you. And then you got this stressed out parent going, I want to be enlightened like the Buddha, but I've got these bastard kids. And all the kids are like going carnage in the background, and he's just like, watching something. It reminds me of that. And I think there's playful in this type of idea that like, this isn't just some like pill that you can have and then suddenly it's all going to be better, but it is something that you can work with that will give you less reactivity over time, less emotional reactivity and volatility. And it could be that people use it as initially as some kind of calming thing. But then I think it'll have profound effects in conflict resolution and collaboration and connection. It's relational intelligence rather than just an individual subjective intelligence that's created through mindfulness. It's now how we connect with fellow people, and it'll improve relationships essentially. I think with the mindfulness stuff, it's all like looking in, and you can look in and you can follow your breath and still be a bit of an arsehole.
Yeah.
But no, actually, if you then translate it to others and you concentrate on the other dimension, then actually that adversely it makes you better at mindfulness as it is, but also increases your peace of mind and harmony and all that lot, because
Yes.
it's all about the others. If your relationships are right, your mental health's right. And too often we think that it's nothing about the outside and it's all about us.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole self-critical element comes in, like, oh, I shouldn't be looking at him in the sauna like that, or I do, I'm so bad at this and I've started one book and I've got 1,000. So it's all about the self. But you just got to look at the society, look at what impact that's having, and it doesn't promote easily the need for stress and for calm and for peace. It's promoting kind of people. It wants people to be pretty riled up. It's edgy. Every time you listen to the news, it's edgy as fuck. It's like trying to get you a little bit wound up, and the media papers, it's all there. Even the social media, it's all built upon likes and dislikes. I mean, it's all fucking anti-equanimity, really, because it's requesting you to be a certain way rather than allowing you to be who you are.
Yeah.
So with kids, you might just be your relationship with the child in certain contexts improves. You might generate more patience. Certainly patience is a big quality that I think emerges from it.
Provided she isn't braying on the door when you try to meditate.
Exactly. Well, yeah, then it's like, don't be so like, precious about it. And like, it's all about external conditions, and it's like, if there is a kind of kid crawling on the door, you go and open the door, and everyone's trying to
don't resist, because that resistance is futile. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's something in that too. Yeah, it's like you work with your conditions, and you stop trying to create the perfect condition for you to then begin, because that will never be a perfect state or place, being of mind that will be perfect. That's the message. And it's like forever this subconscious deep down feeling that the next moment's somehow going to be better than this one.
Sure. I suppose as well, you would probably, in terms of mindfulness and stuff, just going back to what you were saying about children, and I don't have kids, but I did the step parent thing for a little while, and I'm sure you'd agree that playing and giving a child your entire attention and not resisting it and not thinking, I want to go and meditate or play on my phone, is the greatest bit of mindfulness. I read something somewhere. I think it was was it Jack Cornfield or someone like that? And he was like, basically, a child will be more tough on you than any sort of Buddhist teacher. If you went off into the woods or whatever, don't worry about going on your meditation retreat. You've got one right there in a toddler.
Yeah,
be present with that, and that's
that's the thing. It's like, we're not monks or nuns. If you're stressed out housewife, or you've got a stressful job, that's quite gender stereotypical, but if you are just a stressed out person with like 10 kids running around the place, but you still want to practice, you can. Because anything becomes the object of your practice. That's the thing. It's like when you meditate, you're doing the breath, and that's the object. But when you're playing, the play becomes the object.
Sure.
And so the object can change. It's not like, I have to shave my head and sit in a quiet room, and so it has to be cross-legged, and now I'm meditating. It's like, it's kind of bullshit, really. It's like, you can bring it into the real world. You can do it all brushing your teeth. Same psychology applies all the time. So if whatever external circumstances change, doesn't mean that you can't then react. It's all about your reaction and your categorization and your awareness. So yeah, I'm all for trying to make it more accessible for everyday normal people, because I class myself as an everyday normal person that's not,
Hmm.
this I do a normal life, like normal
Yeah.
stressed out, boring job, partner and kids,
Yeah.
mortgage, bills, and trying to maintain it all, and also have some form of well-being, social life, fitness. It's a lot to cram in, and
Sure.
if we look at it all negatively and without equanimity, then it can often be very low. Oh, don't like that, don't like that, and you start realizing there's only a tiny bit of life that I enjoy or like.
Hmm.
But if you view it all with equanimity, it's like it's all kind of magical, really.
Hmm.
It could be, and that's not to say that you're blissed out in everything you do all the time, but you've got less resistance to things because you just go with the flow. You're more fluid with people and transitory nature of time rather than resisting and wanting things a certain way.
Hmm. Who's Fat Tony?
He's poor man. He's my inner child that wanted my inner actor that is still very much alive in me, that gets upset when I'm knee deep in marking essays and stuff for not following my dreams.
Oh, so he's like an alter ego.
Yeah, well, he's just a character that me and Andy created. Well, I played him, and I was this Italian gangster type, and we fell in love with the mustache, and the mustache became a gangster himself and killed my friend Slim McBain. We created like 3 stories, and it was back in the day. It brought so much joy, and it's like now when you get older, it's like that kind of just there isn't time for the joy. It's quite sad.
Sure.
So so when I am really bored and in the rigid existence, I'm like, if I followed the Fat Tony dream, just kept
Mm.
finding him, then he releases some kind of tension for me. Yeah.
I think that's important. Just like, yeah, just being daft. And,
Yeah.
like we've all got, like, I've got a couple of my mates or whatever that you can't explain it, but you just have this crack, which is just being really silly. And
Yeah.
no one else would probably find it funny.
Yeah.
But you like in a certain, there might be 2 years where, and I think it's good to go back to that as often as you can.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I often found, like, there's a lad I used to work with, and we'll send each other voice notes, just
So
pretending to be like our old boss, and just like little like skits.
yeah.
But interesting enough, you can always figure out where the other person's at because sometimes they don't reply.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they're not in the mood
Totally.
for it because
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
too like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then on the converse, will flip, and they'll
Yeah.
send me some at daft, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And on occasion, come together, and then we'll just have an absolute laugh,
Complete
just
harmony.
being stupid.
Wow.
And
And
that's
too much.
good when you're like trying to intellectualize everything all the time. It's good just to be daft. And
Oh,
then,
totally. Yeah. It's the extremeness of us. Like I think there's a human tendency to try and to perceive life as best lived as an extreme. And so coming back to this idea of balance and in a kind of contentment, and it's just less less extreme and more able to like finally play the tune of emotion rather than allow extreme emotions to play you. You can go up and down, so you can be joyful. It's still part of being equanimous, and you
mm,
can be anger, and anger's okay too. Depends how you deal with it. But like these emotions, we're not trying to eradicate any part of humanness. It's just embracing the totality of what it means to be human.
mm,
And that's something that I think equanimity also points to, because it's asking you to look at your discrimination faculties and also look at that of others, and with a bit of wisdom be like, where's this come from? Why is that the way it is? And more often than not, it's come from a very strict parent view or a very conditioned past. Or it could be some past trauma that's occurred and now, or some kind of racism, sexism that we've picked up from the media. It's not really that we don't like people who have a different skin pigmentation, but it's some kind of media escapade that's gone on for centuries, and we've now ingrained that, and We've seen all our loved ones do that. So now we are that, but it's not really us.
Mm.
It's just a kind of fabrication. And so these types of questions are really significant when we want to improve our mental health and well-being. To ask to look at yourself a little bit more and fellow people, and with less judgment and more openness and curiosity and kindness and all this type of stuff, because then you're starting to work with people and also work with aspects of yourself that you might not like you might find out, oh fuck, I'm actually really not a nice person, I'm constantly judging. But if you don't have equanimity towards that, then you're then just going to fall down the self-hate route and low self-esteem and criticize yourself and all that crap. So again, it's about recognizing you have to practice self-compassion with this too. Like be kind to yourself, recognize your common humanity. We've all got flaws, and I'm often quite open with my flaws, and as part of me, I don't want them to not be there.
Yes.
Over time, it's like, will some of them change? I hope so. But equally, if some aspects are still there, I'm not going to beat myself up about them, because some conditioning is real deep and it goes back a long time. And, some would argue we're given it at birth by some kind of godlike creator, or some would argue that it's past life imprint, so it's even deep habitual way of being. And some would argue it's just fucking DNA. I mean, whatever you want, doesn't matter really. That argument's kind of defunct to me, because it's like, well, we're all different and it's dead obvious. So you can have your little belief system. It doesn't mean that anything to me. And I don't mean little belief to belittle yours and mine's is better, but it's just like, I think everyone places so much emphasis on difference and separation. And actually, it's like the majority of the time, we're actually very, very, very similar. We all want peace, kindness, happiness, laughter, joy, all that type of stuff. We all want that. But somehow how we communicate that is by noticing separateness and only hanging out with people we like, or who like the same football team as us, or jokes, kind of real bullshit, superficial reasons. So equanimity is really, I think it's a superpower, really. And if it was adopted properly and looked at properly and trained properly, I have courses that teach equanimity, teach this over a six week period, with meditations and things like that. And yeah, I'm completely for it. And it's beginning to take shape in the science world. Like, some studies have started to happen, measuring it. The psychometric tools out there that can now measure it. And, the book's been translated into Dutch. And last week I signed a contract for it to be translated in Italian, which I'm absolutely buzzing about. Yeah. So like, there's a lot of interest. Yeah. And you ask why, and it's like, well, because I don't think mindfulness is enough, and I'll stand by that. We need other constructs to help us flourish, and we never got taught mental health skills in schools. So no wonder we're so messed up. And so just because equanimity is kind of different and it sounds weird and it's like, whoa, it's a funky word, doesn't mean that we can't make that really, really kind of mainstream. Make it as common as the word, I don't know, and because it's so vital to help us, I think. Of course. Yeah.
So on that note, where can people go if they want to find more about Dr. Joey and your course, your book?
Travel to the farthest mountain you can find, and I will be there. Just look up to the stars, or have an ice bath, and then close your eyes for 5 minutes, and then I'll be there.
Yeah, I hope you're not taking the piss out of me there. I
love
mate. Ice. Yeah,
I love an ice bath. I've never had one, but I love the idea of an ice bath. I've had a nice shower. To be honest, that science is useful. That whole what Wim Hof's done and all that kind of ice stuff, I think is really cool. I'm all for that, and it's part of another vocabulary to do with how we can flourish in that instance. And there's something about equanimity in that as too, is like a relationship to cold, relationship to concept of cold. If there's some stuff there, so there's some parallel. I like it. But yeah, if you want to find me, there's a website. I appreciate if people buy books from my website, so then I'm not just giving like Jeff Bezos more rocket fuel and pennies. I'm getting at least enough to buy a caramel macchiato at Starbucks. I don't drink pints that much anymore. So it's
Sugar, caffeine, and consumerism.
basically, yeah.
That's
I
going to be
want
on your headstone, right?
big branded sugar for
Make
charged.
sure you go to Starbucks and not a local.
We don't want independent stuff. We want just oneness of a massive brand.
Yeah, exactly. Amazon and Starbucks.
I'm a Bucks.
I'm a Bucks. What's the web address?
www.starbucks.com. I'm putting it in the chat.
Equanimity.com.
Yeah, www.equanimity.com, because it's all about you, man.
What I'll do, I'll put a link in as well.
The Equanimity story is another story for a different podcast.
Yeah. So before we go, what's next for Joey?
I'm hoping like Indian Takeaway in a good film.
I knew you were going to say that.
What an arsehole. What about
what? Get off this frigging call.
What's next? I am going to Indiana to teach equanimity.
Wow.
And hopefully Kentucky and Nashville is like a little mini tour of me teaching equanimity.
Right.
Equanimity, Indiana Buddhist Center have invited me to do a course, and so I'm going over there. I'm starting to do public teachings in physical spaces. Like it's all been on Zoom recently, like the last few years. So now I'm like, I led a retreat in Northumberland last week, like a weekend retreat.
Yeah.
Equanimity-based compassionate action is the course I'm plugging.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole fab course that talks about all kinds of stuff to do with equanimity. But yeah, basically, I'm going to Indiana in April, and then see it from there. Then books now and becoming an Italian. So some good, exciting things. But yeah, maybe nothing as well. I might become absolutely, and
that's all right.
Miserable. Yeah, I might be. It might not work, and then, but I'll be all right with it.
Yeah.
Equanimity.
You can just play this on repeat.
Yeah, I can just
take some acid and everything will be fine.
That's how I'll die. I'll just smoke loads of cigarettes and then take some equanimity. Tried my best for you, bastard. And then ironically feel it in my death.
Love it. Thank you so much for listening to that episode with Dr. Joey Webber. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the episode. Unfortunately, I don't have any prizes or anything for you for making it this far, other than one great big thank you. Make sure you listen next week, because I will have Dr. Rachel Taylor on. She is a neuroscientist and an expert in the field of autism. So that's going to be really, really interesting. Please tune in. And if you enjoyed that episode, then please do hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening. Thanks so much.